So today we're going to be carrying on with the second part of Caesar's narratives about the Druids. For those of you that didn't see the first episode, then the book we're going to be reading from is Julius Caesar's 6th book, and that's called Operations Near the Rhine, and the chapter that we're interested in is called Customs and Institutions of the Gauls. Now, in the first part, we spoke a bit about what Julius Caesar said about the Druids' role in Celtic society. And for those of you that haven't seen that yet, I'll put a link to it up there somewhere. But in this episode, we'll talk more about what Julius Caesar told us about the beliefs of the Druids. So, let's get on with it. We'll start with what Caesar tells us about the Druids' attitude towards sacrifice. He tells us that the Gauls are very superstitious, and those that are sick and facing death and those that are about to go into battle appease the gods by offering sacrifice. And they believed that the only sacrifice that was appropriate to be offered to the gods to save a human being was that of the sacrifice of another human being. And to officiate over these sacrifices, the Druids were employed. Some tribes, we're told, would build these colossal images that were made of wickerwork, and the victims would be burned to death within these wicker men. The victims chosen for these sacrifices tended to be criminals or were captured in battle. But if they're a bit short on criminals and others are captured in battles, then he tells us that innocents would just have to do. So what about their gods? Well, he tells us that the god that they revere most was Mercury, or at least the god that Caesar equated to Mercury. He tells us that they had many images of this god, and this god was the god of the arts, and he was the god of the travellers, and he was the god of trade. Next to Mercury, he tells us that they venerated Apollo, Jupiter, Minerva, and Mars. Much like other nations, they believed that Apollo was the god of health and cured illness, and Jupiter was the king of the gods. Minerva was the goddess of industries and handicrafts, and Mars was the god of war. So, when they go into battle, they pay homage to Mars, and after the battle, they collect together all the trophies and all the spoils, and they build a big mound of all these spoils, and they vow these spoils to Mars. And this mound is sacred, and woe betide anybody that dares to take anything as a trophy from what's already been vowed to Mars, and it was punishable by a cruel and torturous death. Now he tells us that the Gauls believed themselves to be descendant from the god Dis. And the god Dis was a Roman god. And he's saying the equivalent of Dis. And Dis was the Roman god of the darkness and the underworld. And so the Gauls believed that they were descendant from the god of the underworld and the god of darkness, which means that they also believed that day follows night. And so it's said that on birthdays and on the beginning of the Celtic New Year, then the celebration always started the night before at sundown. And so they believed that first there was the darkness and then there was the light. So the last thing that Caesar has to tell us, and this is in more regards to the Celts themselves rather than the Druids, is that the children of the Celts should never be seen in public with their fathers, and they should never be seen until they reach at least the age of military consent. Now, there could be something lost in translation with this last part. Now, I know that the children of the Celts were sent off, basically adopted at a young age by others outside of the family, and they would be taught a trade. And so what's probably meant here is that it would be disrespectful for a child to be seen in public as an equal to his father and having an opinion until he reached the age of military consent. But that's my view. The translation is there. You can see it for yourself. And, well, you can decide for yourself exactly what that means. So that's all that Julius Caesar had to say about the Druids. There are other authors that spoke about the Druids, and in future episodes I'll be looking at those as well, and the idea is to get all these narratives gathered together here in one place. But we might break it up a bit and have some other content for those people that, well, just want to break away from the Druid narratives or want to hear something else. And so I think that's the fairest thing for everyone. So I'll be back here again in 2 weeks' time with another episode. And until then, I'll see you again on the next one.